Okay, picture this. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You're at home, feeling absolutely terrible. Maybe a migraine, maybe something chronic is acting up. The last thing you want to do is, drag yourself into traffic, find parking, stand in line at a pharmacy.
Hmm.
So you pull out your phone, tap, 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 and 2 hours later, a motorbike pulls up to your gate, and there are your meds.
It feels like magic, doesn't it?
It does. It feels like the future.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to be the buzzkill here because every time I order food delivery, there's like a 50-50 chance they forget the fries.
Right.
If a pharmacy forgets the fries, but the fries are, say, a critical heart medication, or if that motorbike has been baking in the sun for an hour, that's not an inconvenience. That's dangerous.
And that is exactly where the magic meets the reality. We trade visibility for convenience. You don't see the pharmacist checking the dosage. You don't see the fridge temperature. So the million-dollar question is, does the invisible safety net actually hold?
That is what we are figuring out today. We are doing a deep dive into good pharmacy practice, but through a really specific lens. We're looking at a massive shift happening right now in Africa, specifically Ghana's new electronic pharmacy policies, this huge digital leap.
It really is. Ghana is pioneering something quite aggressive here.
But we're not just looking at Ghana. We're taking that scenario and smashing it together with the absolute gold standards for safety and documentation from the UK, the US, and New Zealand.
It sounds like a lot of geography, but the goal is to build a blueprint. Whether you're a pharmacist in Accra, a technician in London, or just a patient wondering if your app-ordered drugs are safe, we're trying to understand the system that keeps you alive.
So lay out our stack for today. What are we working with?
Okay, we have 4 main pillars. First, the policy documents from the Pharmacy Council Ghana regarding the National Electronic Pharmacy Platform, or NEPP.
The NEPP.
Second, we have retention guidance from the NHS in England, basically the rules on how long you keep data. Third, we have some terrifying liability reports from the U.S. involving malpractice lawsuits.
Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about a wrongful death suit.
Unfortunately, yes. And finally, we have a practical guide on writing standard operating procedures, SOPs, from the Pharmacy Council of New Zealand.
Okay, let's start with the access part. Ghana. I read through this policy, and my first thought was, okay, cool, it's Uber for drugs. But it seems like the government has a much bigger agenda than just convenience.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't just about consumer comfort. The policy explicitly states the goal is equity. In many parts of Ghana, and this is true for a lot of African nations, pharmacies are all concentrated in the big cities.
Right.
If you live in a rural area, going to the pharmacy might be a half-day journey.
So that this digital push is about democratizing health.
Correct. It's about ensuring that a patient in a remote village has access to the same quality of care as someone in downtown Accra. And there's an economic angle, too. They want to create sustainable jobs for the youth in tech and logistics.
Okay, but here's my skepticism kicking in again. If you open the floodgates to online pharmacies, aren't you just inviting chaos? I mean, what's stopping me from setting up a website today called Days Discount Drugs and just shipping out pills from my garage?
Well, in this new system, the government would stop you pretty instantly. And that's where the NEPP comes in, the National Electronic Pharmacy Platform.
The NEPP.
Think of it as the central nervous system for the entire country's drug trade. In Ghana, under this new policy, you cannot operate in isolation. Every single ePharmacy has to be technically integrated into this central platform.
Wait, technically integrated sounds like jargon. What does that actually mean?
It means APIs. It means your inventory software is talking to their government software in real time. You can't just be a tech bro with an app. To be an ePharmacy, you first have to be a registered, licensed, brick-and-mortar retail pharmacy.
Oh, so the physical shop has to exist first.
Mandatory. The online service is legally defined as an extension of a physical premises. It's not a loophole. You can't bypass the regulations just because you're on the internet. And because you're linked to the NEPP, the regulator can technically see what you're doing.
That is a massive distinction. It anchors the digital cloud to the ground. But what are the drugs themselves? We hear horror stories about counterfeit meds in the global supply chain.
This is another firewall they've built. The policy says any medicine sold online must be registered in the country of origin and the country of destination.
So I can't import some sketchy, unapproved supplement from a random country and sell it in Ghana.
No. And if the medicine isn't registrable in the country it came from, which is a huge red flag, you need a specific certificate of the pharmaceutical product to prove it's legit. They are trying to close the door on dumping substandard meds into the market.
Okay, so the system is tight.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk logistics. because this is where I feel like things could go wrong.
Okay.
You mentioned a no-go list in the notes.
Yes. The policy has carved out specific categories of drugs that simply cannot be delivered by a courier.
I love a forbidden list. What's on it?
First up, injectables.
Why?
Think about the risk. Injectables often have complex administration. If you send a syringe via courier, you have no guarantee the patient knows how to use it or that they won't misuse it. The risk of an adverse event is just too high without a professional standing there.
Makes sense. What else?
This is the big one for the African context. The cold chain.
The melt test.
Exactly, the melt test. Anything requiring storage under 8 degrees Celsius. Insulin, certain vaccines, some eye drops. The policy says these are banned from standard delivery unless, and it's a massive unless, you can guarantee strict cold chain management.
Which is hard, right? I mean, picture traffic in Accra. It's 35 degrees Celsius. Humidity is off the charts. You're stuck in a jam for 2 hours.
Yeah.
If that insulin is just in a box on the back of a bike.
It's cooked. It becomes ineffective. So unless you have a validated cooler box with temperature monitoring that travels with the bike, you cannot send it. The policy is protecting the patient from receiving useless medication.
And there was one more category, acute needs. This one surprised me.
This is about triage. If you are having an acute asthma attack or a severe allergic reaction, you cannot order your meds via the app.
Because it's too slow.
Because it's a medical emergency. The Amazon Prime mentality can't override survival instincts. If you need it now, the system effectively says, go to a hospital or a shop immediately. They don't want someone dying because the courier got a flat tire.
That is actually really reassuring. It feels like the policy knows its own limitations. But let's move to the interaction. In a shop, I can ask the pharmacist, hey, will this make me drowsy? In an app, I'm just clicking buttons. The Ghana policy mentions mandatory counseling. How do you enforce that?
This is fascinating. They've made it a required step in the workflow. Even if you buy online, you are supposed to receive a phone call when the medication is delivered.
A mandatory phone call.
Yes. And it has to be authenticated and signed off by a pharmacist. It preserves that human touch. You might not see their face, but you have to hear their voice.
That sounds great on paper, but I imagine it's a logistical beast to implement.
Huge, but necessary. And to do that counseling properly, the pharmacist needs data. They need to know what else you're taking. This brings us to the privacy aspect of the NEPP.
Right, because if I'm using a new pharmacy app, they don't know that I'm already on blood pressure meds from my doctor.
Exactly. The NEPP allows a pharmacist to view a patient's medication history to check for interactions. But, and this is very Mission Impossible, the access is temporary.
Temporary like Snapchat.
Sort of. The example given is a 5-minute window. You, the patient, grant permission. The pharmacist gets a 5-minute window to review your history, make the clinical decision, and then the window slams shut.
Wow. So they can't just be browsing my medical history over lunch.
Precisely. It prevents snooping. It balances the need for clinical safety with the right to privacy.
Okay, so that's the shiny new system. We have access, we have the nervous system connecting everything. But now I want to pivot, because even with the best technology, things go wrong.
They always do.
And when they go wrong in pharmacy, people get hurt, and then people get sued. We have this report from HPSO and CNA. These are big risk management firms in the U.S., and they have a mantra. Not documented, not done.
It's a harsh reality. In the eyes of the law, you could be the best pharmacist in the world. You could save lives every day. But if you didn't write down that you did it, it never happened.
There was a case study in this report that honestly gave me chills. Can we walk through that?
Yeah.
Because it really shows the stakes here.
It does. This was a wrongful death suit. The patient was a 63-year-old male, a complex patient. He had COPD, diabetes, hypertension. He was taking more than 20 different medications.
20. I mean, at that point, your body is basically a chemistry experiment.
It's a very fragile balance. So this patient comes to the pharmacy with a new prescription for tamsulosin.
Yeah.
The pharmacist fills it. A few days later, the patient collapses and dies.
Just like that.
Just like that. The spouse, obviously devastated, files a lawsuit. She claims that the tamsulosin interacted with his other medications, specifically verapamil and citalopram, and that the drug interaction caused his death. She accused the pharmacist of failing to warn them.
And looking at that list, tamsulosin and verapamil can interact. It's a legitimate concern.
It is. So now picture the scene. You're the pharmacist. You're being sued for millions. Your reputation is on the line. The widow is sympathetic to the jury. It's her word against yours.
Nightmare scenario.
But the pharmacist had a shield. He hadn't just dispensed the pills. He had performed a medication review at the time. He had noted the interaction, but determined, based on the patient's history and dosage that it wasn't clinically significant enough to stop therapy.
But the key is,
He wrote it down. He had a time-stamped log showing he ran the interaction check. He had a log showing he offered counseling. He had the clinical notes explaining his reasoning.
and what happened to the lawsuit?
The plaintiff withdrew it. Didn't even go to court.
Because the paperwork was bulletproof.
Exactly. The experts looked at the documentation and said, he met the standard of care. Without those notes, that pharmacist would likely have settled for a huge sum or lost in court. The documentation literally saved his career.
It's wild to think that scribbling a note or typing one is the difference between being a good healthcare provider and being bankrupt.
And the stats back this up. The report says while only about 3.6% of claims are primarily about documentation errors, documentation is a contributing factor in the vast majority of losses. Usually, the defense falls apart because of what wasn't written down.
So bringing this back to our African context, if you're a pharmacist in Ghana using this new NEPP system, you aren't just filling orders. You're generating a legal defense record with every click.
You have to be. As the systems get more digital, the audit trail becomes your lifeline.
Okay, so we know we need to write it down. But my next question is, for how long? I mean, data isn't free. Paper takes up space. If I'm running a busy shop, do I have to keep every receipt from 1995?
This is where we look to the NHS in England. They have incredibly specific rules on retention, and frankly, some of them are mind-blowing.
Give me the basics first. Standard prescription.
Generally 2 years, that's manageable.
Okay, 2 years. I can do that.
But then it gets complicated, care records. 10 years after the death of the patient.
Wait, 10 years after they die?
Yes. Because claims can arise against the estate, or questions can come up long after the fact.
That seems excessive. But I guess it's digital, so it's easier.
But here's the one that really shocked me. The 30-year rule.
Oh yeah, I circled this. 30 years. I can't even keep a houseplant alive for 30 days. What are we keeping for 30 years?
Records for advanced therapeutic medicinal products, ATMPs, and blood products.
Why? Why 3 decades?
Because of biology. These are gene therapies or blood-derived treatments. If a patient develops a condition, say a specific cancer or a genetic anomaly, 20 or 25 years down the line, epidemiologists need to be able to trace that back to the specific batch of medication they received.
So the pharmacist is essentially acting as a biological archivist.
You are the custodian of history. It's not just about the transaction today, it's about public health in 2056.
That fundamentally changes the job description, doesn't it? You aren't just a shopkeeper. You're a librarian of risk.
And think about the logistics for a small pharmacy in Ghana. How do you store records for 30 years? This is where the NEPP and cloud storage become the only solution. You can't keep 30 years of paper in a humid warehouse. The termites will eat your legal defense.
So the digital leap isn't just cool tech. It's the only way to actually meet these safety standards.
Precisely.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. We have the access, Ghana NEPP. We have the defense documentation, and we have the archive NHS rules. But how do we get human beings to actually do this stuff? Because humans are lazy. We skip steps.
We do, and that is where the SOP comes in. Standard operating procedures. Our guide here is from the Pharmacy Council of New Zealand.
Now, when I hear SOP, I think of a dusty binder on a shelf that nobody reads.
And that's the problem. The New Zealand guide attacks that head-on. They say SOPs must be living documents, and they have a brilliant piece of advice about who should write them.
Usually it's the boss, right? The
Yeah.
head pharmacist sits in the back office, writes the rules, and tapes them to the wall.
And that is a recipe for failure, the guide says. Let the person doing the job write the procedure. If you have a technician who manages the stock intake, let them draft the intake SOP.
Because they actually know which lever you have to jiggle to get the door open.
Exactly. They know the reality and, more importantly, buy-in. If I wrote the rule, I'm going to follow it. If you impose it on me, I might ignore it.
They also had a specific tip about formatting that I loved. It was about where to put the warnings.
The warning first rule. This is crucial.
Right. It's like a recipe. You don't want to get to step 5 and read, oh, by the way, you should have marinated this for 24 hours.
Or in pharmacy terms, do not mix A and B. You can't put that at the bottom of the page. The warning has to be the header. Before you even touch the bottle, you need to see the red flag.
It seems so obvious, but I bet there are thousands of SOPs out there where the bold text is at the end.
Too many. And this connects directly back to Ghana. You have this complex new system checking IDs via the app, verifying cold chain temperatures on motorbikes. If you don't have crystal clear, simple SOPs for those motorcycle couriers and those technicians, the system will break.
So the SOP is the bridge between the fancy government policy and the guy on the bike.
It is. It's the instruction manual for the safety net.
So let's wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground. We've seen how Ghana is trying to leapfrog into the future with NEPP to fix access. We've seen how one missing sentence in a logbook can cost you a lawsuit in the U.S. And we've seen why we might need to keep data until our grandkids are grown up.
The big takeaway for me is the convergence. We used to think of retail pharmacy as putting pills in a bottle. Now, whether you are in Kumasi or Kansas, the job is about managing data. You are managing the flow of information just as much as the flow of drugs.
And as we integrate more, as the NEPP connects to the hospitals and the insurers and the logistics companies, I have one final question for you.
Go for it.
The Ghana policy talks about this technical linking. Everything is becoming automated. We have algorithms checking for interactions. We have apps tracking delivery. Do we reach a point where the pharmacist is obsolete, where the human signature is just a rubber stamp?
That is the existential fear. But I'd argue the opposite. The more automated the transaction becomes, the more valuable the judgment becomes. The algorithm can flag an interaction, but it can't call that 63-year-old patient and hear the hesitation in his voice. It can't empathize.
So the machine handles the logistics, so the human can handle the human-human.
Exactly. The signature shouldn't just mean I checked the box. It should mean I thought about this person. That is good pharmacy practice.
And on that note, we'll let you get back to your day. Maybe check the expiration dates on your own medicine cabinet while you're at it. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Stay safe and keep documenting.